Good morning. Welcome to the Family Meeting Podcast. We're glad you're with us. Hope your week has been good. We just had a crazy kind of situation yesterday, I guess you could call it. Our 18-year-old daughter had to get her wisdom teeth removed. So
that was so fun.
Wow, that's kind of a weird thing to say, but that's fine.
She was out of it.
She was really funny. And we knew that. We expected that. I know that you guys know that too.
All the videos were great. So Lysandra was texting me and I'm like, if she does anything crazy, make sure you video it.
Yeah. And I was like, I plan to, don't worry. And the cool thing is about her is she's like already laughing at herself. Like she's not like, don't post it. Oh my goodness. Because so many parents are like, she's going to kill you when she, comes back to normal thinking tomorrow and everything. It's like, no, she's already laughing at herself. She thinks it's funny too. So we had permission to post everything.
So if you're not connected with me on social media yet, you need to be. Because one of the things that happened, she was talking about the fact she couldn't feel her lips.
Yeah, and she's
while she's all drugged out.
Are my lips there?
And I told her, that's because your lips are gone. You don't have your lips anymore. And she just freaked out.
Yeah, she started crying. I was so mad at him because it really upset her. And
it was great.
I felt so bad for her.
I had a lot of dads telling me I was Father of the Year for that. So
yeah, well, I wasn't happy.
You guys need to check it out and let me know what you think.
Yeah, go ahead. You'll find out how horrible he is. But I posted a video, so you can find me on social media as well. I posted a video that was so sweet. She wanted to donate all her teeth, her wisdom teeth, to people who don't have teeth.
Yeah.
So it was so sweet, little organ donation type.
But
situation.
only because the tooth fairy is too cheap.
Yeah, the tooth fairy.
That was the moral of the story.
No,
give more money.
Yeah, I don't know. Anyway,
give more money. So I want to kind of hear your wisdom teeth stories.
Yeah, so many people have good ones.
Do you have any crazy stuff that has happened to you or your kids? We'd love to hear about that. What are the things you did to them while they were all drugged up?
I'm guessing there weren't as many people. There's probably not very many people like you who tortured their children when they were drugged up. Most people have sympathy, empathy, care, concern.
Yeah, they're called good parents.
Yes. You don't know anything about that.
I do not. I am here to teach you exactly what not to do. Someone has to blaze a trail. They've got to be the bad example that others can learn from. And it is my cross to bear. So you're welcome, everybody. I make all of you look good.
Well, you are my cross to bear, so...
Well, let's bear that cross because we're talking about divorce today.
Perfect.
That's a great segue.
Yeah. All right, let's get into our episode, babe.
Gather round, everybody. It's time for a family meeting. The Family Meeting is a show that's all about family relationships. We're the Osterkamps. I'm Thomas, and this is my wife, the good parent.
Hello, and welcome to our family. Welcome to episode 184 of the Family Meeting Podcast. We're glad you're with us today. On today's episode, we're finishing up finishing up...
What are we finishing?
Our 3 episode series on understanding and preventing divorce. So we've been looking at divorce statistics and the leading causes of divorce. In our first episode, we looked at lack of commitment, which was cited as the leading cause of divorce. We looked at financial issues last episode, and today we're going to look at another leading cause of divorce, and that is infidelity.
And the whole point of this series is to give us a higher view of marriage, to be more committed and devoted to our marriage and doing what we can do to make it better, to make the relationship stronger, to improve ourselves relationally with our spouse. And we have a resource that can help you with that. Happily Never After. So 5 ways you can either destroy your fairy tale or 5 ways that you can build it. And that is available on Amazon right now. Or if you say, I want a signed copy. I want to get a signature from that guy and the nice lady that I listen to on the podcast. You can go to familymeeting.org and hit shop and purchase a signed copy of Happily Never After.
We talk about all the reasons we could have or should have gotten divorced.
Yeah, so many reasons. Like we could have fallen into this very easily.
Yeah, absolutely.
Literally one of the one of the only reasons we didn't was just that high commitment that we had.
And the high view of marriage itself.
Talked about that in the first episode in this 3-part series here, having that commitment level.
Yep. Okay, so before we get into our discussion on infidelity today, we're going to share a few more statistics on divorce with you. And these statistics come from Forbes Advisor. And this is what they say. Couples who live together before marriage are more likely to divorce. It's interesting, isn't it?
That is interesting.
But now they kind of explain why that could possibly be, and it does make sense. Living together prior to marriage is one predictor of the likelihood of divorce. A total of 57% of couples who did not cohabitate prior to marriage had a union that lasted 20 years or more, compared with just 46% who did live together before tying the knot. Many factors could explain this, including that couples with stronger religious beliefs may be both less likely to live together before marriage and less likely to divorce. So meaning that people with religious standards, they have these standards that say we don't live together before we're married and we don't divorce, meaning really that they have a higher view of marriage itself and a higher commitment to marriage itself.
I'm kind of interested, our listeners, kind of what their experience has been. Did you guys cohabitate before you got married or not? And how are things going for you? It's an interesting discussion because I don't understand how those things are linked together as far as living together beforehand and a higher rate of divorce.
Well, if you have high religious standards, not necessarily Christian, but just any religion that says divorce is wrong. There are a lot of religions that say divorce is wrong, right? Typically, those same religions will say it's wrong to live together unmarried.
Yeah, but the divorce rate for Christians and non-Christians is almost identical. So it's just fascinating.
Okay,
like
is true.
I'm trying to figure out where they're coming at this from. So
that is true.
And what the actual reason that it is higher. So that's kind of what I'm thinking about.
Okay, I see what you're saying, because I was understanding what they say here, but what you've said is a great point.
So I'm just curious, what is the factor that if you live together, and they do have studies that show this to be accurate. So I'm just kind of curious, what's the factor that makes you more likely to get a divorce if you cohabitate?
Great question.
Before you get married. So
Be interesting
I know we have a wide range of listeners and what your experience has been. So having friends who are divorced increases your risk of divorce. And I thought this was interesting.
It is.
Because, and this is one of the things we talk about a lot, is that your life and your choices do not just impact you. They impact everybody around you in a lot of different ways. And so this is an interesting factor on divorce is, hey, if you have friends, and especially close friends, who are divorced, then you're more likely to get a divorce yourself. The marital stability within a couple's social network also play a role in whether their union lasts, according to this study here. Couples who have friends who divorce have a 75% increase in the risk of their own marriage ending. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
And even couples with 2 degrees of separation from divorce still have a 33% greater risk. So, you think about the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon or whatever.
Yeah.
Like this is 2 degrees off as far as divorce. So it's not necessarily your close friends, but they have close friends who are divorced. And here's what kind of happens, and I think this is the background of some of that, is if you're going through a divorce, especially a rough divorce, the way you talk about marriage, or the way you talk about your spouse and you're complaining and whatever else, the person you get divorced with your close friends, right? You're just venting, you're letting it all out. Well, that starts to get you thinking about your own spouse and the things that you don't like and so on and so forth. And so I can see how the rate goes up here when you have people. And so some sociologists believe divorce is a social contagion.
That is fascinating. But it makes sense.
Yeah, because once again, it's about, hey, your choices and what you do in life impacts the people around you.
Right. And the more people that you have close to you that have been divorced, and because they have been divorced, they're pro-divorce. They're like, I'm so glad I did that. I'm so glad I got out of that marriage. You begin to think, okay, divorce is normal. Divorce is a viable option for me. And maybe that's what I want to do too. Peer pressure, huh? I never ever thought about peer pressure with divorce.
I'm curious, how many people have pressured you into leaving me?
I'd rather
that
not
number
say.
has to be really high.
It's astronomical.
All of our listeners are.
After each episode, I get several letters,
phone calls,
texts,
emails.
phone calls, Facebook messages, Instagram messages. I get a lot of messages.
That dude is the worst. What are you doing with him?
No.
Get your children away from him.
No. Most common reasons for divorce. Okay, so we're going to get back into the common reasons for divorce. And we've already talked about 2 of the high ones. We're going to talk about the third high one today. But these are the other ones that kind of came in afterwards. And these are ones that we could do full episodes on. We're not going to in this series. It says couples report that many different reasons for ending a marital relationship. However, these are the most common explanations cited by divorced couples. So we already talked about lack of commitment and financial disagreements.
Yeah.
And in just a moment, we're going to talk about infidelity. So those are the 3 top ones. But right after those comes these. Domestic abuse.
Yeah.
Yes. Prompts a divorce in 24% of cases.
So is that 24% of marriages? It's because of that?
Hang on one second. 24% in total cite domestic abuse as a cause of divorce.
Yeah.
So a quarter of divorces are saying it's because of domestic abuse.
Man, that's so sad.
Mm-hmm. Domestic abuse is a serious crime.
Yeah.
And it's also somewhat common among those who are divorcing, which we definitely say, if you are in an abusive relationship, get out. We are not being silly or funny. We are being very serious. If you are being abused or your children are being abused, you need to get out of that situation as soon as possible. Once you get out and you get to safety, you can make your decisions in a safe place.
Yeah.
About what you want to do with the marriage. Do you want to pursue counseling and work on it? And we want to recommend the book Enough is Enough. Do you remember the author?
Oh, yeah.
I can't remember the author.
Not
Dave.
offhand.
I want to say Dave someone. I'm so sorry that
If
I
you
don't.
just look up Enough is Enough, it'll come up.
It's a great book. We've both read it, and it's all about how to get out of an abusive marriage. And there is a whole procedure of what to do. Once you get out of the danger zone, then you can decide if you want to try to work on the marriage, and how it really just maps out exactly how to do that. It's a great book. Even if you are not in an abusive relationship, it may be good for you to read so that you can help others. I know it's been good for us. So if you are in an abusive relationship, please get out. Please get to safety. We want you to be safe. God wants you to be safe.
Well, and there's a good chance that somebody you know is going through this. Mm-hmm. And so it does give a very specific, well-developed plan for how to walk through this, and then you'll understand how you can be a better help to those around you. And I just want to say this, since we're on the topic, to those of you who are going through this right now, don't believe the lie that nobody cares about you, that no one will help you, that, nobody loves you. There are a lot of people in your life who love you, who will support you, who will encourage you, who will help you. Mm-hmm. And so if you have to get out, make sure that you are taking those steps to get out. If you're unsure how to get out, like we said, if you go through the book Enough is Enough, he gives a very specific way to safely do that. So, and there's a lot of other reasons couples get divorced.
Substance abuse was one. Mm-hmm.
And so you think about, other than lack of commitment or infidelity, here are 3 of the top ones. So 58% of couples report arguing and excessive conflict. So it's literally you just can't get along. Mm-hmm. 45% of divorcing couples indicate they married too young. So that's kind of interesting. I was too young. And sometimes it's, I never got to live my life or whatever else, the idea behind it. So.
Yeah, I always laugh when people say that they married too young, because I got married at 18. And I actually felt like that was an advantage to me because we grew up together. Like I feel like we developed together rather than apart and then tried to come together. I felt like it was an advantage. So I kind of thought that was a little comical, but I understand that perspective.
And if you get married too young and you don't really grow up, that can cause a lot of problems,
Or you grow
right?
apart rather than together.
So if you got somebody who wants to grow and another person who doesn't, you're going to end up in two very different places. So
Right.
I can understand this a little bit. And then finally is substance abuse. Often there's just, there isn't not just one factor resulting in a marriage ending. Couples may face many problems, as these divorce statistics show. So it's like, okay, we've got all these different problems thrown together. This one's the last straw. I'm done.
Right. Okay, let's look at the statistics on our subject today from this same article in Forbes Advisor. It says, but even when there are a variety of issues, people who dissolve their unions usually report there is one final straw or tipping point that pushes them over the edge and causes them to make that final decision to divorce. In fact, 69% of divorcing couples report that this is the case. And when there was a final straw, infidelity was the most common issue that ultimately prompted the divorce, with 24% of couples reporting that was their final straw.
Well, it's like you can put up with a lot in life,
right?
But once, bless you.
I'm so sorry, I had to sneeze.
Once that line is crossed, a lot of times there is no coming back from that. Now, we're not saying you can't,
right?
But for a lot of people, they choose not to. That's just it.
Right. Domestic violence was the ultimate cause for divorce in 21% of couples, and 12% said that substance abuse was the deciding issue. But today, like we said, we are going to talk about infidelity, and a lot of times that is that final straw. As Thomas said, you can put up with a lot for a while.
So 60% of couples cited a partner's unfaithfulness as a reason their union ended, and that's a high, percentage.
Yeah.
And we've had this, what was it, episode 1, when we were talking about high view of marriage and what Jesus had to say. One of the reasons he gave for ending a marriage was exactly this. Your spouse's unfaithfulness in this area. When a marriage is supposed to be monogamous and one party fails to fulfill this obligation, trust can be lost and the marriage may be irretrievably broken. I don't know that there's a bigger betrayal than this.
Right. Now, having said that, we want to share with you that we have 2 episodes entitled Recovering from an Affair, episodes 38 and 39. And these episodes are about a very specific couple who shared with us their journey to recover from multiple affairs. They are still married today.
Yeah.
And it's been years. And so what we do want to tell you is that you can recover from an affair. You can stay married after infidelity. And those episodes are specifically about that. And so we want to encourage you to go listen to those if maybe this is your situation.
Yeah, and they're not the only couple we've dealt with. I mean, I can think of one couple right now that both of them cheated on each other multiple times over a lot of years. And basically we're like, hey, we're at the end of our ropes here. And we were able to help them walk through that. They made a commitment to their marriage, to each other, and they're still together today.
Right.
So it doesn't have to be the end. A lot of times it is, but it doesn't have to be.
Right. But today we do want to quickly talk about God's design for marriage, the repercussions of infidelity, and most importantly, how to prevent it. And we did talk about God's design for marriage in our first episode in this series, so we're not going to belabor it, but we do want to remind you that God's design for marriage is one man, one woman for one lifetime. Because the first thing before we can really talk about infidelity is explain to you why it's wrong, right? We have to understand that it's wrong. We have to understand that it's not okay, especially in today's culture.
Yeah.
Because in today's culture, you will hear from all different directions that an open marriage is okay and having multiple people in your marriage is okay and swinging is okay and all of these things. There's so many ideas out there that have become acceptable. But that doesn't mean that it was God's original design, and it does not mean that it is right. So we have to really quickly just build this quick foundation so that we can move on. Your marriage was not meant to be between anyone else besides you and your spouse alone. Marriage is not designed to be open to anyone else, including inviting anybody into your own marriage bed, including pornography, emotional affairs, and of course, physical affairs. There's a lie out there that if both spouses consent, you can open up your marriage to others in these and other ways. As long as everybody's okay with it, it's not a problem. You can do anything you want. And that's just not true. If you believe this lie and live according to this belief, you are setting yourself up for a lot of hurt, heartache, and a high potential for divorce.
And just to remind you of Jesus' words here in this conversation, in Mark 10, verses 6 and 7, he said this, "But from the beginning of creation, God made them male and female. Therefore a man shall leave his father and mother and hold fast to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. So they are no longer two, but one flesh. What therefore God has joined together, let not man separate." And here we see the design for one man and one woman for one lifetime.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we know that having that open marriage or having an affair, cheating on your spouse, it is wrong. It's very clear that it's wrong. And this is what I try so hard to help people to understand, especially if they are new to understanding the Bible and God and his character. Sometimes we think that God is just this big bad guy in the sky waiting to strike you with lightning. He just wants to make your life miserable. But that is not who he is. The rules that he has, the design that he created is for our good. It is for things to operate in a good way. And even though you may feel like these rules that one man, one woman, it's just the two of us in the marriage, no one else, nothing else. It's so strict, it's boring, it's prudish, whatever. Listen, it's the way to have a good marriage. It's the way to have a good life. It's the way to feel loved and cared for. And what we want to look at next is what are the repercussions of infidelity? So God's design says no infidelity, no cheating. And once we look at these repercussions of infidelity, you're going to understand that the reason God designed it that way is to protect you. It is for your own good and for the good of your family and your friends and other people in your life. Okay? So we looked at this article by Psych Central, and they reported if you've been cheated on, so this is what happens to the person whose spouse cheats on them. It may take a long time to heal. It can cause you chronic anxiety. So these are the effects of infidelity.
Yeah.
Chronic anxiety, post-traumatic stress, depression, and a mistrust of others for a very long time after the event. Some common symptoms may include flashbacks, nightmares, and obsessions about the event. I have not been cheated on. I have not experienced this, but I can say all of that makes sense to me. That I totally understand that would be how you would feel. It makes sense, totally. You may also experience becoming reactive at any perceived threat to yourself or your relationship. As a result, you can have disruptive sleep and disruptive eating patterns. So that's some of the effects that cheating has on your spouse. It's long-lasting effects. And I hope that all of us would say, I don't want to do that to my spouse. Hopefully all of us have some sort of love for our spouse, and this is not what we would want to do. And if you are considering having an affair, if you're walking down that road, if you're just a little too close to that coworker, so on and so forth, think about what it's going to do to your spouse long-term, short-term, both. What's it going to do to them? And then don't do it.
Well, and here's the thing too to think about, when we're thinking about the effects that it has on somebody when they've been cheated on, there is a high chance that the person that you're with right now has had somebody cheat on them, right? And so being understanding of what they've been through, you say, well, I've not done anything that would make them not trust me. No, you didn't, but somebody else did. And so having some understanding about that, there may be some behavior that you're doing that's totally innocent. It may be just the way that you handle your phone or whatever else that brings back, that moment when their spouse was cheating on them or their boyfriend or whoever was cheating on them. And just the way you do that, it triggers something that's happened in the past. And so try to have some understanding about what they've been through. Yes, I know that you may not have done anything, you're not doing anything to take away that trust personally, but when somebody's been wounded like that, a lot of times they don't have control over the way that comes out. There's some reactions, there's some post-traumatic stress and all that kind of stuff that they're dealing with. And so, we do need to be understanding of the person that we love in those circumstances. And here's the thing, leading up to an affair, right? A person can convince themselves that it won't hurt anyone because no one will ever find out.
Right.
Which is so untrue. We think about what the Bible says. Be sure your sin will find you out. One way or another, it's gonna be found out. And so it's going to come out, and when it does, it hurts everyone, especially your children. If your child finds out you cheated, it can cause many ripple effects in their life. Your child may side with and trust your partner more than you. They may experience feelings of confusion, anxiety, abandonment, and isolation, not unlike the partner who was cheated on. So a lot of times the kids go through the same type of emotions and experiences that the person who got cheated on. And so one study also suggests that children with a parent who has had an affair may have trust issues with future romantic partners, right? So you're not just hurting your spouse, you're also setting an expectation for your children of what relationships are like. And they can form negative perceptions of fidelity.
Right. Cheating can have negative effects on the cheater as well. Okay. So if you have an affair with someone, you are hurting yourself, which we see that in Proverbs.
Yeah. It's not just hurting your spouse.
Yeah.
Your loved one, you're hurting yourself as well.
Yeah, exactly. And I wish I could remember the exact quote from the Proverbs. I didn't write it down in our notes, but it talks about how can a person hold fire and not get burned? And that's what the cheater thinks is like, I'm going to play with fire and I'm not going to get burned. And that's foolish and it's a lie and you will. And we all know that if you play with fire, you will get burned. And so here's some of the effects that cheating will have on you. If you cheat on your spouse, this is what will happen to you. Stress. So much stress. When I think about the amount of work and effort that must go into cheating on someone, hiding the phone conversations, scheduling the meetups, lying constantly, keeping track of your lies, the amount of stress, like even just talking about it, it literally stresses me out right now.
Yeah. And then things that people come up with, like even in joking, like there's certain social media posts that come around. I'm like, somebody literally sat there and thought of a way to cheat, changing the name of whoever you're cheating with to settings and the picture to the little settings logo. So if a notification pops up, there's nothing.
It's settings instead. Yeah, see, that's great. It's like more work to cheat on your spouse than to just work on your marriage.
Yeah.
Just work on your marriage. Okay, so stress is one of the factors. Guilt. Oh my goodness, the guilt. Harsh judgment from others. Difficulty in being trusted. Difficulty in settling in their next relationship. So maybe there is infidelity. The marriage is dissolved. It ends in divorce. And then you try to go on to have another relationship. You're going to have problems there too, including difficulty in trusting others.
Well, and not just difficulty in trusting others. That person that you cheated with is not going to fully trust you because of how your relationship started in the first place.
How could you possibly trust that person? A cheater feels the pain of self-betrayal and failure to keep their own values. The cheater may struggle with self-esteem issues, face isolation from loved ones, and deal with the lingering doubt in new relationships about whether or not they can truly commit without repeating past mistakes. So they even doubt their own ability to remain faithful. And this doesn't sound good, does it, guys? This doesn't sound great. This is what happens when you cheat on someone. So we're not trying to shame or make anyone feel bad if they have made that mistake, but we are trying to set this up as a warning to those who have not, or maybe are thinking about it or whatever, or flirting with the idea of it. We want to say, it's not worth it. Please don't do it. That's what we're trying to get at.
Yeah, and infidelity has serious negative effects on you, your spouse, your children, your family, and could even affect your job, ministry, and friendships. Most significantly, statistics say it is very likely that it will end your marriage. Remember, 60% of divorced people say infidelity was the cause of their divorce. 85% of marriages where a partner cheats ends in divorce. So it's like...
Only 15% of marriages that have infidelity can make it afterwards.
Can work through it because it's a lot of work to. It creates a giant hurdle to be able to get past to continue on. And
you think about it, like even healthy marriages. Like, okay, we'll use our marriage as an example.
Healthy's in quotes.
Yeah. But neither of us have cheated on each other. We have tons of hurdles that we have to deal with already. We have disagreements in marriage, finances, parenting, time, ways that we spend our free time. Like, I'm trying to think of all the stuff that we fight about or argue about. Like, it's sex, like all kinds of stuff. That's just the normal stuff in a marriage where nobody cheated. Now, you still will have all that stuff to deal with, plus infidelity. Yeah. Plus lack of trust.
And it's
harder.
It just magnifies all the other stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's tough. Now, remember, we do have those episodes on recovering from an affair where you can stay married. So you can be that 15%. If this has happened to you, you can be in that 15% of a marriage that survives after infidelity. But what we're trying to tell you is it's so hard. Don't do it to your marriage. Don't do it to your marriage. Okay, let's talk about the main point of this entire episode. And I know we're kind of getting to the end, but the whole point is to prevent infidelity. This is all meant to be a warning to you. It's meant to help you understand the severity of it. And the goal for understanding the causes of divorce is to make sure it doesn't happen to you. So how can we make sure infidelity won't happen to you? And this is what I think is the most important thing. And this applies really to you and me greatly. Really. Yeah. First of all, we have to come to the realization that you are capable of cheating on your spouse.
Totally, yeah.
And I get where many of you might be sitting there and you're like, no, I would never do that. Because I kind of feel that way. Like, I would never cheat on you, Thomas. But that's such a stupid thing to say because I am capable of every sin at all times. And so I absolutely could cheat on Thomas. And I have to keep that in my mind and remember that. Because the minute we start thinking, I would never do that, we let our guard down and we become vulnerable to our own lust and our own passion. We start to think, I don't really need to protect myself in this because I would never do that. Foolishness. And we see that in 1 Corinthians 10:12. Therefore, let anyone who thinks he stands take heed lest he fall. Don't be so pride and arrogant to think I would never do that, because guess what? That's when you fall.
Yeah. And I always come back to King David. Who is one of the greatest leaders Israel has ever had, greatest kings they've ever had. He was called by God a man after God's own heart. And yet, look at the things that he did.
Yeah.
You know, he committed adultery. He committed murder to cover it up. Like, if he can do that, I can do that.
Absolutely.
We all have it in us to do that. And to betray the people who trust us the most. And so it is coming to that understanding that, yes, I'm talking to you who's listening to me right now, you are capable of cheating on your spouse. Mm-hmm. Now, if we don't want to get to that point, then we need to set up some barriers to protect your heart and your passions. And so if there's things I don't want to happen in my life, I'm going to set up barriers. You think about our own house. So let's just think about our house here for just a second. When we go to bed at night, we go around, we lock the doors. Mm-hmm. Right? We want to prevent people from coming in that we haven't invited in. And so we set up these barriers to keep them out. And the same is true here. We're talking about our hearts. We want to protect our hearts. We want to protect our passions. We want to protect the people that trust us the most. And so you set up these barriers. And so we have some barriers that we've set up in our marriage, in our relationship, in our life to help protect us from infidelity. And some of you are going to listen to these things and think that is so over the top. That is so old-fashioned. You're so out of touch. And that's fine. You can think whatever you want to think. Maybe these are not barriers that you would put into place or whatever else. But you need to have your own barriers. Like, what are you going to do? What's your plan to protect your relationship? And so use these and put them in place if you want to, if you feel like that's, something that will be helpful and beneficial to you. But if nothing else, use it as a conversation starter. And we're going to talk about this when we get to family meeting. But what are some barriers we need to put in place? So, all right, here's some of ours. Okay, so no time alone with the opposite sex. So, in other words, you're not in a private place alone with somebody of the opposite sex.
And this includes professionally.
So there are times where we are out in public with the opposite sex, but we're never alone in a private place with a person of the opposite sex.
Yeah.
So no phone conversations or text threads with the opposite sex.
Typically, like if I need to have a conversation with a male, it's the four of us. So it's me, Thomas, that male, and his wife. There are some threads that we have that's just me, Thomas, and a person, whether it's a male or female. But typically, if we're going to have a text thread and we're going to have a conversation through messaging of any kind, we're both on the message thread. And
when there's work conversations that have to be done over the phone or whatever else, we typically will tell each other, like, hey, I'm going to call Rusty because Rusty's our worship leader, our executive pastor. And so Lysandra might say, I need to call Rusty and talk to him about this event or this whatever. Like, okay. Or I may have a phone conversation I need to make with somebody, some lady, and hey, Lysandra, just so you know, I'm going to hop on this phone call with this person.
But even those
we just
phone
keep
calls,
them in touch.
Yeah, and even those phone calls, though, we're not like going into a room, shutting the door. There's nothing hidden. So even if I have a phone call with, let's say, Pastor Rusty, I might be on Bluetooth speakerphone in my van. My kids are in there. I'm talking in the living room. My husband's right in the living room too. So there's no hidden conversations is the whole point.
So that's one of the things. Definitely no private texting or of those sorts. So no flirting with the opposite sex. And this, to me, seems like it would just be like a no-brainer, because you're opening up a door there, and some people are like, well, it's just flirting, it's just innocent, it's whatever. I totally disagree. And it's like I said a moment ago, if you never want to get somewhere, you don't start down the road. So flirting is something that is totally out of bounds for us.
And this one can be tricky, though. I will say this, because with friends, you joke around, and we have a couple friends that we joke around with, and we, it's teasing, it's fun, and we have great time with our friends. But if that joking around is happening outside of your spouse, it can quickly turn and cross that line of flirting. And even with your coworkers, you think about your coworkers, typically most of you with your coworkers, your spouse isn't near you. We're an exception to that, but many of you, that's kind of something that you really need to be careful of, because you have members of the opposite sex that you work with, and joking around in the workplace is normal, typical, harmless, we feel.
Yeah.
But you've got to be careful, because it can pass from that joking around, fun friendship relationship with a coworker into flirting. So watch that line. Guard it carefully. One of the people shared with us who had an affair that was what happened with her, is flirting with coworkers at work, and it led down that path and ended in an affair. So that's a line that really needs to be watched.
Well, and when it becomes more romantic or even, innuendo of sexual or whatever else,
Touching. It can be touching.
You've definitely crossed that line.
Yeah.
We're not saying you can't have fun or joke around with, a coworker. We're not saying that at all. But it can definitely cross a line, and that's something that you want to watch out for. For us, we don't have close friendships with the opposite sex outside of our spouse. So I do not have close friendships with women that Lysandra's not a part of that friendship. Mm-hmm. It just doesn't happen for us. Mm-hmm. Lysandra does not have close male friendships that I'm not a part of. You say, well, I've known this person, for my entire life, even before I knew my spouse. Well, that's fine. Continue the friendship, but your spouse better be included in that friendship.
Yeah.
What about this? No hidden phone.
Mm-hmm.
If you've got to hide your phone, you've got to hide what you're doing on the phone, then obviously you're doing something that you yourself know you shouldn't be doing.
Yes.
If your spouse is going to be upset by what you're doing on your phone, then you shouldn't be doing it. Same thing on the computer, the television, movies, or whatever else.
Like, we'll never, if Thomas walks in the room, I never feel the urge to just slap my laptop closed to hide.
Oh, yeah. Or shut the TV off.
That doesn't happen because we're not hiding what we're doing from one another, because once you start hiding what you're doing, that's when you know it's wrong and it's got to stop, and it's leading to a really bad place. So everything is on limits in our marriage. Like, everything is on limits. And I've heard people say, oh, it's my phone. He has no right to look at my phone. Thomas has every right to look at everything in my phone all the time. In fact, another one of our rules or boundaries, I guess you could say, is that all passwords are shared and available to each other. And that's what I believe that what should happen in your marriage is you should have access to all your husband's stuff. Husbands, you should have access to all your wife's stuff. You should be able to look at each other's phones, computers, laptops, whatever, at any time. That will prevent infidelity. It will help prevent infidelity. So I can look at Thomas's phone at any time that I want. He can look at mine. I can look at his computer, vice versa. It's all available to each other. And this is a way that we prevent infidelity.
Well, and it says, Jesus himself said, the two become one flesh. Mm-hmm. And so there is no mine or yours.
Yeah.
This is our life together. And if I'm not doing anything that I shouldn't be doing, then it shouldn't bother me if Lysandra walks by and says, hey, can I see your phone for a second? There are times where it's not that I don't trust Lysandra, but I'm just kind of curious. Like, a notification will pop by and it's like a page. Somebody texted her entire page, and I'm just like...
That happens to me a lot.
Like, what in the world is this?
Yeah,
like,
he'll scroll through and be like, what could
texting
possibly...
you a book? This is insane. This should be an email. And even for an email, that's long. But, Lysandra's not offended if hey, what's going on? Like, what is this? I'm not offended if she picks up my phone and wants to look through it. Why? Because if you've got nothing to hide, nothing to feel guilty about, then it shouldn't matter to you.
Yeah.
It's strange to me when people are like get offended or defensive about their phones and stuff.
That's a red flag to me.
So,
but I've even seen like on movies or TV where the one spouse is so angry with the other spouse for reading their journal. I'm like, man, if I kept a journal, which I do not, if I kept a journal, I would be giving it to you and being like, please look at how I feel. I want you to know more about how I feel.
You don't need to do that. You vomit your verbal journal out all day long. So
I'm verbally journaling. I like that. It even kind of rhymes.
Yeah.
All right, but if you don't feel like your spouse can see your journal, then there's something in your journal that's wrong, which comes from your thoughts. And if your thoughts are wrong, then they need to be corrected. Your spouse should have access to everything, your journal, your drawers, your everything. I mean, you think
you have access to my drawers.
No, thanks. I'm good. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. I don't even know what we were talking about now. I'm off.
Yeah.
Family meeting? You go ahead, babe.
So bottom line is make sure your spouse has access to your drawers. That
You
is the
threw me off.
number one takeaway from this episode. But seriously, you don't want to go down that road. So you need to have some barriers, whatever they are. You need to have some safeguards. And this is the family meeting that I want you to have tonight with you and your spouse, is talk about the safeguards. Have you literally taken time to set up some safeguards, to set up some barriers to protect your marriage, to protect your oneness as a spouse? So what does that look like? If you've never had that conversation, it's time to have that conversation. Like, okay, what do you think are some good safeguards for us to have? And they may not look anything like what ours look like, and that's okay. We're not telling you what safeguards to put in place. We're simply sharing with you what ours are and saying, all right, use it as a conversation starter. So what does that look like? What kind of barriers are we putting up between us and other people so that we can protect the oneness of our marriage? And then, all right, what happens? What's the conversation like if somebody doesn't live up to the safeguards? Like, what are those conversations like? The point of this 3 episodes is to raise all of our view of what marriage ought to be. Jesus raised up the view of marriage so high that his disciples said, if that's the case, like if marriage should be held up to that case, it might be better if we just didn't get married at all. Mm-hmm. Like, that's how high Jesus uplifted marriage. And that's the view that we need to have. We need to get back to that high commitment level. Financially, we need to just get on the same page. And we need to understand that that can be a vulnerability for our marriage. All right, so let's get on the same page financially. And then if we know infidelity is almost impossible to get through as a couple, you can get through it. But when we look at statistics, and 85% of people, they divorce afterward. All right, what can we do to set up some safeguards? Maybe you've been cheated on. Maybe you're going through that right now. All right, what can we do to come back from this? We can come back from it. So, encourage you to have that kind of family meeting tonight.
Thanks for joining us today. Please go and subscribe to the Family Meeting Podcast from your favorite podcast provider. And if you found this information to be helpful, please share this episode on social media and invite your friends and family to listen in with you.
To find more content information Lysandra and I provide, you can go to our website, familymeeting.org, or email us at info@familymeeting.org. If you'd like to shoot us a text or call us, you can send a voice message at 904-257-3062.
And we would like to invite you to join us for our next family meeting. These last family meetings, we've been talking about marriage, and that has been our focus. So we're going to switch things around a little bit next week and talk about parenting. We want to talk about being approachable. Are you a parent who makes it feel like your kids can approach you and talk about anything? We're going to talk about approachability next week.
Thanks for joining us today for this family meeting. Have a great week, everybody. This meeting is adjourned.
Yeah. All right, safeguards in marriage. Why don't you share yours with us? I would love to hear what you have. Sometimes I'm thinking, like, what did we miss? What else do we do? Because I think now, after being married, pardon me, after being married for almost 21 years,
yeah,
what do we do that we don't even think about the fact that we do it? We just do it naturally to protect our marriage. Maybe there's something we missed. So I'd love to hear from you if you have something that you could add to that list of barriers and safeguards.
I would love to hear it.
Yeah. But thank you so much for joining us this week, and we will see you next week on YouTube. Bye-bye.